Hi, and welcome. I am Ben Bomar, founder and president of Lithius Group, and today we're going to be talking about legacy knowledge and its role in leadership development. So, whether you are watching live or on demand, I'm glad you're here. And let's explore how institutional knowledge builds stronger future leaders for your organization or the organizations that you care about. And this session is really going to be focused on practical solutions and not just theory. If you are here live, it's always nice to know who's watching along. So if you don't mind dropping a note in the comments, please do so and network with your fellow participants. But let's get into the data first. Why are we here? What's the issue that we're looking to address? Well, quite frankly, the Bureau of Labor Statistics identifies that there has been a marked decline in tenure amongst the employed population in the US over the past decade. And on average, that US employee tenure has declined about 13% since 2014. Now, this is just a tad confusing, so I want to draw your eye to a couple of lines. That overall 13% is the large black line. The blue line is employees who are between 55 and 64 years old. And their average tenure is now, after the decline, about 9.6 years with their employer. Now, that green dotted line is for folks in the ages of 25 to 34, and their average tenure within an organization today is just 2.7 years. And so we're going to use those two groups to try to indicate and say, who are these people that are earlier in their career that are likely to be your future leaders, and how do we get them to understand what it is that perhaps some of your more tenured, often older employees may know. So what are the implications of this information? Well, if you think about institutional knowledge like it's an inventory or raw material, there's 10% less of it within your organization than there was just a decade ago. Additionally, organizations have less time to develop future leaders internally. And therefore, when future leadership hiring happens, that's either going to come from a smaller group of internal candidates or external folks who lack the context and the real understanding of your team, right? So instead, what we need to do is embed institutional knowledge into your development plans, which is going to make it possible for you to be able to train up either internal hires or those folks who come in from outside the company. And we know that this is important because it's exciting to see who and the types of people are participating today. We've got folks who are visiting us again that had registered for this, but we see C-suites and presidents and founders and directors that are looking for actionable next steps and what to do to improve leadership development for their teams. So our agenda today is to first focus on who. Who are your future leaders? Where can you find them? Next, what is it that they need to know? And then how can you get started sharing that knowledge? We'll offer a quick challenge of something that you can book on your calendar in the next week. And then I'll let you know how we help when we're called upon by our clients. But fundamentally, Lithius Group improves succession planning, employee development, and operational performance by celebrating the institutional knowledge of key people, those people who know a lot about a lot, and amplifying your team's best practices. And I founded Lithius in 2021 to address that specific knowledge loss that happens when there are transitions of employees, often out of the organization. I have seen and lived firsthand the wasted time and the stress that comes from lacking the knowledge that I need to be successful and knowing that there were people in the organization until very recently who had it. There just had to be a better way to preserve that wisdom. And that's what we do. But fundamentally, let's talk about your future leaders. Who are they? How can you develop them? And how can you place them in a teaching culture? This is the classic 9-box model. And you have probably used it because it was developed by McKinsey in the 70s and lots of organizations use it. Performance is measured as below standard, at standard, or above standard on the x-axis, and promotability as not promotable, promotable 1 level, promotable 2+ levels on the y-axis. That's the typical use. And you might wonder, well, where do people fit in this grid? Who are they? And how do we ensure that the knowledge flows appropriately? Well, if you have a normal distribution of turnover and you have a normal distribution of talent, then these are the percentages of what a typical 9-box is going to look like. There's a lot of focus often on those, sub performance, low promotability folks, and there's a lot of focus on up and to the right, the high flyers, right? High flyers and the low performers. But there's a lot of hidden value that happens in all of the other boxes. And if you look at that, 35% in a typical distribution is going to be down there at the right level of the organization and meeting the standard that you're looking for. So this is where your people are. We know that development is important. What do most organizations do to develop their talent? Well, they focus on skills training, right? It is tactical, it's transferable, but it's basic. Then there's relationship development. And we know that relationships, mentors, employee resource groups, etc., those are important for building a sense of community. Absolutely true, and they're valuable. We also know that experiential learning is the best. Being a part of a project team, getting to be a part of a focus group, going to events, or even taking on a stretch rotation, all of that is wonderful, but it is also extremely involved. And ultimately, these programs and this type of development, if that's all that you do, is either not custom enough or it's too custom. Because those skills that you're teaching your team are not you. They are important, but they are not you. And relationships can be difficult to scale. They are often one-to-one or one-to-few. And quite frankly, those experiences that offer the best opportunities for learning, those don't often come around at the right pace to meet the demands of your future leaders who are interested in advancing now, or to meet the business needs that you have. So ultimately, all of these experiences and this type of training leaves out institutional knowledge because we're not getting enough people building relationships and we're not getting them into the experiences that are most important. So a teaching culture, one where every part of your organization is engaged, is an incredible opportunity. Because what we're trying to do is get information from this group into the hands of this group. Because these folks who are down there, the 35, the 20, the 10s, they know the institutional knowledge of your organization, and they are able and could be recognized and celebrated as they pass it on to others. So it's about getting the right people talking to each other and then having them talk about the right topics. I'll share more on what this image means in a second. Here we are, institutional knowledge. We use this image of kintsugi because it's not just processes. You can teach people skills. It's how you teach them to recover from failure, from understanding the mistakes of the past. What went wrong? How did you rebuild in the moment? How did you improve? That is the gold that strengthens your organization. So I'd ask you to consider for yourself these questions. What if your team understood the company like you do? How does the story of your founding, your origin story, still shape your culture? What do you as a leader expect from others? What's a mistake that you will never make again? Consider that. Have those lessons and ideas in mind. Because those stories help define group identity. Stories create a shared culture and values. Right here in the U.S., I'm from the U.S., we've got George Washington and the cherry tree. I cannot tell a lie. It's a myth, but it's meaningful. We have Rosa Parks, real, and shapes the national identity of courage. We have these other examples, whether invented or true, visual, story, they tell us how we define ourselves. Now, I also want to just point out, facts also define a country, right? But corporate knowledge, think about how does your corporate story more closely mirror Rosa Parks and the bald eagle and the inspiring? Or is it, how do you file your taxes? What's a fair catch? Yes, you can turn right on red in this country, and this is how you select a Medicare plan, right? A lot of onboarding focuses on these types of activities and not those inspiring stories. And yet, even when it's not your company, I bet some of these stories ring true for you. There's the garage, that apparently that's where Microsoft started. There's Wendy's Chili, which was a great idea from Dave Thomas, that he had all of these burgers that he didn't sell, and he had this cooked ground meat, and he was able to create chili so he could sell it the next day, scrappy. That's Dan Price, who developed the $70,000 minimum salary for his organization. And then there's that shared experience that we all had, represented by this gentleman whose child wandered into his office at home during COVID, during a BBC interview. Each of these stories tells us something about the people and the time in which they took place. So what stories capture your values, and your mindset? Because that is at the heart of institutional knowledge. It's not just data. It is process. It is experience. It is networks. Because all of that together provides you the expertise and the context and the relationships to be successful. And often that's found within long tenured employees, perhaps even you, and folks who are in charge of the strategy of the organization. And so the goal and opportunity is to get your future leaders to grasp and understand this institutional knowledge faster than you have ever needed to train them in the past. Let's dig deeper. Your future leaders need to understand these things: context, the company history, the culture, things within the industry. They need to have an understanding of personas, these key relationships and the expectations that are related to them. There are processes that are long and complex, maybe difficult to recognize all at once. You sort of have to live them in most cases. And of course, there are tasks. Every organization and every role has tasks, daily, weekly, etc., that have to be executed. And there are best practices about how to do that. But let's focus primarily on context and persona. I use these two images because Simon Sinek's start with why, right? The golden circle still resonates. I also like this image because it's grainy and it's a flip chart. It's simple, and yet leaders, if you haven't watched it, please go watch Simon Sinek. Google that, look it up on YouTube. But it's grainy and it's simple, and yet it resonates. So high production value isn't absolutely necessary to communicate the key messages that you want to communicate. On the other hand, you got Graham Norton. If you're not following, you don't know who Graham Norton is. He's on BBC. He leads a talk show, brings multiple celebrities in at once, and he facilitates a conversation that exposes the realness of these celebrities. He does some research. Got an amazing team. They research who they dated in high school. They research what their first audition was. They find out incredible facts, but they create vulnerability. He creates vulnerability in that moment, and you feel like you understand these people better. And so you have an opportunity within your organization to reinforce your mission and values, and to help show future leaders the bigger picture and who you are as a person and who your leadership team is as people, not just the tactics and the steps. So that's context and history. You also have an opportunity with personas. We think about personas often in project management or product development or in selling, because we know that understanding how someone operates, what's important to them, what they think about, what drives them, what turns them off, all of that is helpful in moving your organization forward. But internally, you have other personas within your team. Is it the accounting team? Is it a key donor group if you're a not-for-profit? Maybe it's your field service. It could literally be customers. Each of these groups has unique needs, and they see the value of your organization and your people differently. Leadership is not just about processes, it's about managing relationships. And so some focus and some training on personas that you understand so well and sharing that with others is a real opportunity. Then, of course, there are processes and tasks, right? Processes can take time, years to master. You have to see them a few times. Often budgeting and sales cycles are an example of that. Tasks can be learned more quickly, but there is a best practice. There is a way to do it right. Why go through the trial and error, and there's always error, of forcing someone to go through this and learn it on their own? Future leaders need to understand the context, the personas, the processes, and the tasks. So I'd like you to consider, what's a persona that your team struggles to understand? What's a war story that always seems to come up when your team gets together? Who in your team has seen it all? If it's you, maybe it's someone else as well. And frankly, what has to be explained over and over? Because now we're into the sharing piece. Because when you can celebrate and retain and share the wisdom that drives your success, you are creating future leaders that can continue what you have started. But focus on stories, not just on steps. And of course, minimize this, right? I love sharing what I get from AI because it's just ridiculous. I've never seen a worse spelling of fire. It actually took me 3 or 4 times to figure out what that was. There's any number of fire hoses here, but you get the idea. We have normalized the idea of drinking from a fire hose. And often that leads to stress. And, I can't say it's not effective, right? We're just firing information at people, and eventually some of it sticks in their brain. But if we understand how people learn, we can do a better job in structuring knowledge sharing, especially these key and important, hard to understand, hard to get the first time institutional knowledge lessons. And Bloom's taxonomy of adult learning is a great way to think about this, right? There's this early stage where understanding and remembering is important. That's the drinking through the fire hose stage. That's being invited to every meeting and listening to other people talk about what they understand and you don't, and having one-on-ones set up with people who you don't know yet and you don't know why you need to work with them. That's that phase. And what's missing in that phase is an opportunity for those folks to often go back and revisit the information that's been shared with them. Yes, there might be standard operating procedures. Yes, there might be videos on how to use software. But as we talked about earlier, the stories, the institutional knowledge, how things get done within your organization, that is often not documented in a way that makes it easy for others to revisit. And video storytelling by the people that you trust and recorded demonstrations by the subject matter experts address this problem. They allow self-paced, scalable knowledge transfer. So let's talk about video storytelling. What makes a great video story? Well, first off, there are a couple techniques that I'm sharing here, and I'll talk through these pictures. One, use the SOAR approach. You might be familiar with SOAR or STAR from interview coaching: situation, opportunity, action, and result. And there are probably situations that your organization has faced that dramatically transformed how you operate and how you operate today. For example, what was the economic downturn of 2008 like for your business? If you're anywhere close to real estate, you were probably shaped permanently by that situation, and you had an opportunity to respond, you took some actions, and you have the results. And those are now evident in your organization today. Or maybe you need to follow a hero's journey framework, right? That's the Luke Skywalker, Katniss Everdeen framework. And this is Madam C.J. Walker. She founded one of the early hair care monopolies in the United States. I mean, she's just a dominant force in hair care for African Americans. Who is the innovator who built what you now lead? Who is that if it's not you, who is that person before? And how does their ethos speak to your team today? I also want to encourage you to use dialogue. Some of my favorite podcasts are when there's 2 people and not just one person speaking directly at you, which ironically I recognize I'm doing today. But use dialogue, or have some other fun way to show vulnerability. Video is vulnerability. And this mean tweets, this example here of Andrew Garfield reading mean tweets about himself, that whole shtick on Jimmy Kimmel Live is all about these celebrities being real. Read the FAQs, have a dialogue, learn. There's also the opportunity to use technology and the subject matter expertise of many, many folks on your team to record demos of processes and tasks. So if you have someone who has subject matter expertise and you have a system like Zoom or Teams or Loom, which is a great software product, then sharing your screen and capturing that information is actually really easy. And there's a great product called Scribe, which we use as a part of our processes, and I'm happy to tell you more on another day, to capture the step-by-step of working through software. So if you can make the demonstrations of how things get done visual, narrated, on-screen, captioned, all of the ways that you like to learn, and make it available to everyone on your team, especially those future leaders. So where does this leave you? Well, these methods are going to allow you to connect experienced leaders and subject matter experts with the rising talent within your organization. Half of your workforce has outstanding wisdom. The other half of your workforce needs it. So if you have experts, you have the ability to record, you have the time to devote to it, and you have a desire to recognize the value of institutional knowledge, then you are ready. And by the way, if you haven't figured out where you are, as I think about the presidents and founders and C-suite folks that are participating today, you're actually at the bottom. Because where else are you going to go up within your organization? So you're part of that 35% that needs to be delivering your wisdom to the rest of your team. And when you do that, you're going to have a complete development plan. You're going to have one where skills and relationships and experiences are still core to the learning. However, the institutional knowledge is going to fill in the missing gaps. It's going to be available to teach your future leaders best practices and process excellence and have a full understanding of the history and context within the organization that they operate. So my challenge to you is to schedule a Zoom or Teams, whatever system you use, a week from now for yourself, just yourself, and prepare a 5-minute story about your company. Use that SOAR format to get started. It's the easiest. And record that and share it with a colleague for feedback. Just go through the experience of sharing one of these stories about your foundational history with someone else and see if that doesn't open your eyes to the possibility of sharing quickly important information with the rest of the team. As a bonus challenge, look at a persona. Choose a persona that your team must work with and must be successful working with. Tell a story that is balanced. What goes well? What didn't go so well? What do you absolutely want to keep doing? And again, share that story with someone that you trust and get their feedback. So these are just 2 ways where you, as a member of your team with deep institutional knowledge, can begin the process of sharing and then ideate on how you could include others. And I am confident that this would be helpful because we have been successful in helping people share what they know to improve succession planning and hiring and transitions and all of it. And we've done it in a variety of ways and situations. We've worked with teams to document their best practices, whether that's client intake or data collection or sales recruiting. We've helped prepare organizations to package up what they know so that they're ready for mergers and acquisitions. And we have helped C-suite executives plan for retirement. And these folks have had responsibility for some of the most financially and emotionally sensitive tasks and information within the organization. And it's successful. It also works across industries. So whether you're manufacturing or not-for-profit or anywhere in between, this approach works really well when you have accuracy that matters and context that matters. Put that together and you're in a great spot. Now, you can do all that by yourself. Please get started, call us. If you need help, we have 2 core products. The first is Key Person Programs. That's for folks who know a lot about a lot. And we work with them to help them share what they know to create that custom curriculum for succession plans and development plans and such. And then we also expand that to more folks within the team for our best practice programs, where we work with subject matter experts, and we're very focused on knowledge and process. And so we then build that library over time that helps fuel institutional knowledge and development. If any of this sounds interesting to you, and I hope that you find it valuable, but if you would like some ideas of how would you put together a full, robust plan for yourself, well, schedule a survey session with us. Free, no obligation, takes about an hour. And during that time, we build a robust roadmap by identifying what's important, who knows it, and who needs it. We'll provide you with some recommendations of where and how we could help, but that plan is yours to keep regardless. No obligation. If that's not the right step for you today, I'd encourage you to think about these people who know a lot about a lot. Drop us an email at info@lithius.com. We'll be glad to send you the key person risk worksheet. That is something that you can do on your own time, share with your teams, and get a sense again of who owns that institutional knowledge within your team and how is it connected to the goals that you need to achieve. So with that, I'm going to turn to the chat and ask for, see if there's any questions that I can answer. But otherwise, thank you so much for participating. If you found this helpful, I hope you'll share it with others on your team. Smash like and subscribe, all that stuff on LinkedIn. But most importantly, I hope that it gives you the opportunity to think differently about the institutional knowledge, to think about the future leaders within your organization, the limited time that you have to be with them, and the importance of training them and teaching them what you know. Thank you so much.